Keith already has a question. We'll answer that at the end. So I am going to get us started in a few. I will make you the first question I answer and maybe actually answer during the presentation. I think we'll get started now. So today we're going to talk about the digital watchdog MEGApix AI PTZ. So these are PTZs with AI built into them. All right, I'm Paul Krofsik, digital watchdog. As I said before, I'll be answering questions. You guys pepper them into the Q&A thing, and I'll try to answer them at the end. I'm sure there'll be a few, and I'm just going to roll ahead to the slide, which is next. So first off, all our products are NDAA and TAA certified. I think we might have one in our price sheet that we've got to switch out. So other than that, though, NDAA, TAA certified, developed in the US and Korea. Most of our manufacturing is done in Korea or Taiwan. And we are, as I said before, we qualify for NDAA and TAA with compliance, so we're good to go with all day contracts. Man, I do need more sleep. Anyway, let us get rolling along here. So the products we're talking about are the two AI PTZs. Now here's a list of specs for you, and I'm just going to read a couple. A user and AI controlled pan, tilt, and zoom. All right, you get great wide area coverage at a minimal cost, has our Starlight Plus, 360 endless panning, vector drive, which means it'll try to find the fastest point between A and B when it goes through. We have a 4K and 3 megapixel version. The 3 megapixel version actually has a 60 FPS mode. Both have the same 6.5 to 260 millimeter PTZ lens with motorized zoom, and a really good and really adjustable autofocus, a variety of smart presets, patterns. I think they're called swings. They have a bunch of different, I said I didn't want to do that. They have a bunch of different settings in there so you can go in, make changes, and have the camera react to the way you want to, whether it's manually or whether the AI has taken over. So they got WDR in it. A key thing is the 1148 foot smart IR with intelligent sync, and you actually will see the adjustment menu where you can go in and adjust the power of that IR setup. Backlight compensation, two-way audio, again, all kinds of presets. You have I haven't been able to test it, but a micro SD card in there. And if it works the way our other cameras do, if the connection to the server goes down, it'll still record at the camera. And then, of course, built-in web server, because that's how we're going to talk to it. The two models we're talking about, the 3 megapixel and the 4K, are built-in camera AI. So these are PTZ AI auto tracking cameras. It's built into the camera. No other software is needed. It detects persons, vehicles, even bicycles, high speed, zoom, pan, and tilt, okay? And that's all adjustable in the camera setup, and it's a proven AI and PTZ engine. Although these are new to us, the design and the quality is proven and have been installed by the tens of thousands around the world. How do you explain AI auto tracking? I just have a little video of one taken of a truck across the street, and it's picked up a moving vehicle, and the camera's just going to go and try to keep that vehicle in view. It works very well with crossing vehicles and crossing people. If it locks onto something, it will continue to track them anyway. It moves and follows the objects independent of an operator. All right, so these are all good. By the way, keep your questions coming in the QA mode. So DW Spectrum integrates the controls for these new PTZ cameras. So what does that mean? That means that in Spectrum, we have a little button you press at the top, and you can go in and you can tell the camera to zoom in, zoom out, and you can then click on the screen and move the camera around or just drag the camera around. There's on-screen controls and keyboard controls. So if I wanted to zoom in and out, I'd hit the plus minus button on there. And it would also move around by itself. The number keys can be set up. And actually, Spectrum supports USB joysticks if you want to put a joystick controller on it. So most USB joysticks, I actually found a sort of a heavy-duty gamer one, and it worked just fine with it. So you just got to adjust the pan tilt speed because the different joystick controller sends different types of data. All right. All your presets, okay, can be managed in Spectrum. So you can have different presets to move the camera around, set some presets to home, set presets to do different things, including tours, all in Spectrum. So regardless of the AI part about it, Spectrum can control the camera for the operator from the very easy to use menu. And here's the zoom in. You just take the mouse and you highlight an area, draw a box around it, or you click somewhere, or you go to your list of presets and you can do a couple hundred presets in there. You can go save position, type in what it's called, even give it a hotkey. Again, in Spectrum. Spectrum can control the cameras. All right. Also, what Spectrum gives us is the ability to go in and set our record speed. If we're doing motion detection, which doesn't matter with a PTZ camera, if there's any plugins for it, but also allows us to go into the web page and do the setup of the camera. Now, you'll notice that this camera has a lot of settings in it, and I'm not going over every setting. I am going to go over the main ones for getting the camera going, but also and the AI auto track. There are a lot of things that this camera does, and as Spectrum, new releases of Spectrum come out and new firmware updates for this come out, there'll be more functionality added to it. So when we go into setup, one of the first things we do is we got this little setup button over here on the upper right-hand corner. Move my mouse around there. There we go. And we click that and we go to setup. And the first thing is the fact you have these different menus. And matter of fact, I'm going to pause it 1 second because this is the information shows you how the encoding is going on. All right. So you've got your primary encoding, which is your first stream, primary stream, which is this one, I think is the 4K camera. And then you've got your secondary stream. And then you can do another secondary stream and another secondary stream. So up to 4 streams from the camera for different products and applications. So you also, though, have the video menu. Sorry, guys. I went past that. Here we go. We will roll forward. And the video menu will tell you how to set the encoding. Okay, so over here. So we can change it from 2 megapixel, I think it goes to 5 megapixel, and then 4K, 30 frames a second. And you can set different profiles for these down below. All right. And also we can adjust, I'm going to get this here. Come here, you. There we go. You can adjust for different profiles for H.264, H.265, iframe intervals, bit rate. But the beauty of this is you actually don't have to mess with this because Spectrum will control this from Spectrum. So you set it to record 15 frames a second and you want quality high, it's going to set the bit rate and everything for you. So you don't have to do a lot of messing around with. In this particular menu, there are other menus you'll have to make some changes to. So the next menu is the image menu. Now, the image menu is one of these ones that I'll probably do another webinar on because it configures the exposure, shutter speed, if you want to turn on slow shutter, your day-night modes, your brightness contrast, all that stuff. And those things are important because if it's set up right there, the tracking will be very accurate. So having a good picture, whether it's at night and day, and if you notice you have config setup 1, config setup 2, config setup 3, so you can actually schedule these different config setup to give you the best possible picture depending on the time of day. So you could have a day-night mode, right? Config 1 and config 2, okay? Or let's say you've got a lot of extra light coming on from street lights and maybe an LED illuminator or whatever. So you could maybe use that on config 2 or even set config 3 to when if it's like a cloudy day or something like that. So there's all different kinds of things you can do with this, which, like I said, I'm not saying we don't have the time to go over, but there's a lot of little bits of functionality in here. You can go in and really make the camera perform in every situation. So one of the other things I want to do, though, is the IR mode. So the IR mode can be adjusted. Let's just say, for example, there's a lot of reflective surfaces. So you might want to go to auto eco mode, which means it's not going to go to full power, but it is going to adjust it. So if you zoom in, it's going to increase the power of the IR. If an object is close, it's going to decrease the power of the IR, and it does it very quickly. So you've got auto eco, auto normal, and auto strong, means it's going to try to be as much IR as possible, which again, in some areas, maybe there's a tree nearby that might be detrimental to it. You can do manual, or you could have it always on. I don't know why you'd have it always on. There's probably 1 or 2 applications out there where that would be worthwhile. So as we go through here, we've got the image menu, we've got your network menu, and again, I am just going to hit pause. So the network lets you change all your basic IP settings, okay? Your IP, your subnet mask, gateway. You also, though, have, we'll let it roll forward here a little bit, wait for it to go. There we go. You also have your, again, your IP for all your different ports and everything, your DDNS, your email, connecting, and then you go to your event menu. And your event menu actually has motion detection. It's got audio detection built into it. And shock detection allows you to go in, and if there is a impact at the camera or nearby the camera, it can also send out an alert. And the audio detection the same way. Maybe it's always noisy there at this location. And when there's no noise, it can create an alert. Or if there's a loud noise comes in, it can create alerts. So you've got 2 different kinds of detection there, along with alarm inputs, alarm outputs. See, silence detection, sound detection. You've got shock detection. You've got your sensor. You've got your event OSD, so you can actually force something on the OSD. So saying there was a tamper mode, tamper will appear on the display. This is, of course, sensitivity for something whacking the camera, the shock detection. And then at the end here, we've got HTTP. So this camera can send out, I'll let it play a little more, HTTP events to other things. Okay, so let's say you're running this independent of Spectrum. You can have an HTTP string to turn on an LED illuminator from manufacturer X or Digital Watchdog. All right, so this thing will run independent. That's the beauty of this. The AI runs on the camera. The AI doesn't need Spectrum to run, okay, when we're talking about auto track. So you come in here and you've got your device information, and the information really just gives you your serial number, what the COM port's doing, stuff like that. Now let's talk about the AI menu. All right, and we'll just go to the next slide here, maybe. There we go. Oh, sorry. So we're going to skip the AI menu. I forgot about this. And go into the fact that this is the PTZ menu first, because you set up the AI, which we'll talk about, and then you go into the PTZ menu, and then you go into a tracking menu. You set whatever presets you want in the camera. Okay, if you needed to, you set your patterns, your swings, your groups. Okay, you can also set up a direction OSD, which will tell you when the camera's pointing north. Okay, you have location OSD. And then the most important part is turning on the tracking. Okay, and like I said, we're going to go into the setup of that very shortly. These are all your presets. Create a group ID. And then this is an important one to check: simultaneous action with PTZ tracking, which again, we'll talk about the setup in a moment. In Spectrum, you can get into the setup of the camera right from the web page menu. So you've got to be an administrator. You can go in and get into the web page of the camera. So even though I'm showing you this one, which doesn't have the web page on it, I pulled most of these from Spectrum and going in and doing it. So you don't have to be at the unit. You can be remotely, and it's night and the IRs don't seem bright enough. So you can go crank up the IRs and make them brighter. All right. Anyway, so what you do is the first thing you go into the AI menu and you go to object detection and you turn on object detection. All right. And that looks a little like this as long as my video plays. There we go. Object detection. Turn it on. Click apply to warn you frame rate could drop. I haven't seen any frame rate drop from the auto tracking. Okay. We have our unit here in Tampa, was running at 15 frames a second. We had it running at 30 frames a second. The other one was running 60, and they were always at or near because of it. I think that maybe if you have the camera doing a lot of stuff, you might see some frame drop. So because we're only using what performance hit at 43% performance rating. So we then go to this guy, which is the next one, which is the object detection, and we set up our objects. Now you notice you can click a person, bicycle, and car. Now cars, of course, are any truck that's detected, or really any vehicle that's detected. All right, and we're going to talk about these things, but you set them up, you put them in, and a person you could have blurred out. Let's say you just want to know a person's there, but for whatever reason you don't want them identified, or whatever, you're just wondering who's wandering around in a certain area, you can have them blurred out for whatever reason you want. So we go in, make sure our object detection is set up. All right, choose which objects to track. I set this one for all of them. I chose to blur people. Then I have my bicycle with a box around it, my car with a box around it. I set the sensitivity for people ultra, bicycle in the middle, and then cars can be high or ultra, those two settings. And then smart object does a little more analysis of the scene. So if you have a lot of, moving shadows and stuff like that, that will help with that. So we go in here, and this is a little more cleaned up. We've got person and car, check, not bicycle. And then you got these two boxes. So these two boxes are the minimum and maximum zoom and object size. So you can make this very small, so it's going to react to a very small object off in the distance and zoom in on it, okay? And then your maximum size, let's say, is this one. And you make those adjustments based on the scene, or based on the fact that maybe you have the camera zoomed into a gate first, and then it's going to follow whatever comes through that gate, okay? Come on, next slide. There we go. So let's talk about a tech tip. You see what I'm doing here? I'm stretching out the display a little bit for the web page because Spectrum deals with a lot of different web pages and different cameras from different manufacturers. And this one happens to have a lot of stuff on it. And so I go in and I stretch it out a little bit. I stretch the top and the bottom, and I make it so it's easier to see everything that's on the screen. It's got a little zoom in button up here, and you can go click right in and go to setup, and you'll see there's just a lot of things going on with it. And you can see it's actually, this was a video I took a desktop, see it's tracking in the background. All right, so let's go into the general tab of the tracking, and you're going to go set your mode here. So you got your standalone tracking priority. There's another choice called external. You set your session time. Okay, so that's the amount of time it'll sit there and wait as something's moving. Okay, you can set it for immediate, or you can set it for 1 second, 2 seconds. This one happens to show 5. Okay, you can set this target state for moving or stay. So tracks objects when they move or stay for a set period of time. Okay, and flow tracks objects that move in the direction of the AI ROI direction, which I'll show you guys in a second. So flow, I haven't used, but I've used the stay, where let's say you got a bunch of parked cars and one of the cars starts moving. It then goes, hey, that car is supposed to be there, and it will tell the car to move. Moving, it's looking for moving objects, and then it's going to track those moving objects. All right. When you have this set up and you have your view size, because I got one question about auto tracking 2 or more objects. This camera, if you set your view size to middle, okay, if it's locked on to car X, and another car goes by and even blocks it, or a truck, it will then, wait. I think you can set the holding time for up to a full minute, but then it will reacquire that object it detected before and then continue to follow it. So it's very good at discriminating, okay, which was one of the questions I got in. But every scene is different, so I can't tell you that changing it to target state from moving or go to all, maybe make the zoom only 10x instead of unlimited because this thing goes to 40x. So it might zoom in on something way too tight. Maybe the tracking time's got to change. And then reset position, where does it go to rest after it's done tracking? So these are all things that have to be set up at each scene. All right. So we got A, B, then we're going to go to C, and we're going to set view size. I find when you have the view size middle, which I think is the factory default, seems the best, seems like you get the most out of it. Okay. It's really what it's looking for. And then when it will do an initial zoom in and then wide, after it tracks the object, it goes wide a little bit and then continues to zoom. And then you go to the availability of zoom integration. Maybe you want the camera to stay at the same spot. You don't want it to zoom in, okay? Or you only want it to zoom in a little bit, all right? So over here, then we've got our zoom limit. You can say, okay, I want to do unlimited, or I only want 10x. Maybe you only want 3x, or you don't want it to zoom in at all. And then probably tracking time, how long it'll track the object, is something that needs to be tweaked more, okay? Because your tracking time, you're going to have vehicles going fast and slow, and you got to find the happy medium in there. But I have found that the first time took me a little while to set it up, probably really 10 solid minutes till I could make it track. And then I say, okay, I only wanted to track people, and I reset the camera and set it up for tracking, and then I seemed like went very quickly to set it up. So it's one of those things you can set up, and any of you guys are interested, we can have some of our sales reps, RSMs, and SEs walk you through it. Again, this recording will be available later. And as I said, keep your questions coming in. We got a lot of questions that I can answer near the end. So holding time. So when tracking an object, if it disappears, the amount of time it waits till it reappears. And this camera is very good at that, because on our road here, I've got the 4K and the 3 megapixel, and they both seem to react identically. You have a car that gets hidden by a truck, and it's the length of a truck. So you say, okay, length of a truck is X number of feet. I'll set it for 20 seconds. And then that thing doesn't reappear, or then reacquire the next thing, but you could do up to 60 seconds. And then reset position is when it's finished tracking, okay? It'll then go back to a reset position, which is usually preset 1, but you might have preset 5, or it might be a tour where it's going between two spots. So you can do several different things. These PTZ cameras, I like to keep them moving, but this auto track, I think will keep them moving anyway, and hopefully in the area. And by the way, you can restrict how far it's going to track somebody so it doesn't go too far beyond where it's supposed to be, and it's trying to watch this car and it's not looking where you want to do its initial look to search for objects. So run tracking. So down here is a little button that says run tracking, stop tracking. So this is the test, allows you to test, start and stop, test something what didn't seem to track. Now, I will say this, it'll display auto track on the screen. It is tracking, but the first time you set it up, it's like a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. It has to think its way through things, and then it starts tracking everything. So it seems like it doesn't do it quite instantly the first time you set it up. After that, if you stop tracking and you start it, it starts tracking right away. We're going to give you another tech tip later on how you can manually turn this on and off if the end user wants to, and it's a very easy thing to do. So under advanced, under the PTZ menu, you have a parking thing called auto park. Okay, so because after a certain period of time, no one's touched the camera, it's not tracking anything, you want it to park and then go back into tracking mode. So you set that parking action for auto track, and then auto track will basically always be on unless you actually manually turn it off. All right, so you got your AI PTZ running around, tracking a few things, then dead in that warehouse or that parking lot. Then it goes back to its preset X, whatever that is, and then it'll start going into the track mode because it's pointing at a gate or pointing at a door or pointing at the rear of a building or something like that. So over here is where you can set your preset and then your dwell times. And what you do is you make sure you check that. So this way, if you have a tour running, let's say it's a small tour because you're still trying to cover the same area and track these vehicles. If it acquires a vehicle, it'll then follow that vehicle around or person around, whatever, and then go back and then restart your tour. All right. So that's a really cool thing that it does. It works in conjunction with the PTZ tracking. With the PTZ tracking, there's no reason to really turn on a tour, but you can if you want. All right. So now another tech tip. So you're asking me how to, well, you're not asking me. I'm going to tell you how you can turn it on and off manually from the Spectrum interface. And what you do is you create a rule. And there are two rules you create. A rule for start, which is this one, okay? And again, you can put in the IP address of the camera, then send PTZ action. So it's this string, and then you got to have the username and password, and then preset go to 660, which starts it. Okay, so starts the auto tracking, and then this one stops the auto tracking. Okay, simple as that. You can have two buttons on the screen for your soft trigger. So we're going to create a soft trigger. We're going to assign it to whatever users we want. One's called auto track on. You need the camera's username and password. Now this camera can have multiple users, so you don't have to use admin, but the user you create have got to be an administrator. All right, and then you give it to the users who might need it. So we got the owners, okay? And I got the little thumbs down for stopping the auto track. And then you can have interval of action. You can only do it once or whatever. So again, an easy way to do it. And it's 2 HTTP commands to start and stop your the auto tracking, because someone may, hey, this thing is not looking where I want it to. It keeps following the wrong cars. Got to get our technician out here to just readjust that. I'm going to take over. I'm going to stop it, move the camera around a little bit, and then hit auto track again. So again, just a little tech tip for you guys. Again, 40x optical zoom in the camera. The camera is designed for indoor, outdoor, no special housing is needed. That's IK10 impact resistant hardware. Will operate under some really harsh conditions. It has that tamper mode, so if someone, I don't know, throws something at it, a rock or something like that, you'll actually know there's an impact if you turn on that alert function in the camera. Of course, 360 view, okay. Super long IR, 1140 feet. And actually, this is one of my favorite features. So many cameras have that where you can only go barely to the horizon or they don't quite make it to the top. This one actually goes 100 degrees. So you get an extra 10%. So it actually points up, okay, when you do it. So I'm going to show you on the camera from Cerritos. I just chose something that was up in the air. See, I can point this thing up, and I'm just going to have it zoom in on the tree. There's no squirrels or anything in the tree, but we'll have it zoom in on something and look at it. It would have been good if there were some squirrels or something like that built into it. So again, zoom in. I zoomed it in about as tight as possible. Right now we're at 15. I'm going to force it to zoom in a little more. There's 18, 40, that's 40x. You can pretty much see the termites in that tree. So camera, of course, has a wide dynamic range built in. And we have all the different accessories, the parapet mount, the corner mounts, pole mounts, ceiling mounts, wall mounts, all that stuff. And it actually matches from our previous cameras. So you can actually replace some of our previous cameras. The mounts are the same. So it's actually pretty good. All right, so I'm going to get into a little Q&A.